Today I fucked up by trying to help a dead person. This happened Friday. I'm still loopy on pain meds, so bear with me. My best friend and I wanted to go on a hike. Simple and innocent enough. I had been cancelling lately due to personal things, and she was about to go out of town for the weekend to see her long distance partner, so I wanted to spend some time together before she left. I forgot to put on socks, and was more worried about getting out the door quickly. We picked a nearby state park and drove about a half hour out of our way to get there. It's a gorgeous little pocket in our town, with a small lake and a few mild trails. Part of the way down the lakeside trail we both realized we definitely needed socks, and she had lost her phone, so we had to double back. On our way back to the parking lot is when we noticed him the first time. The car had been there since we arrived. I know because we had to walk through the cloud of exhaust on our first trip down to the trailhead. It was the fact that he hadn't moved at all yet that piqued our interest. We minded our business, assumed he was waiting to pick someone up, and got to the car. Hike round 2, time to try again. When I say we took this hike at our own pace, I'm not kidding around. We stopped for every puddle, broken bench, mushroom, weird log, and nice view we came across. What would take some people 40 to 60 minutes took us almost an hour and 40. So obviously, seeing that the car had still not moved set off a few alarm bells. We walked up to the window for the first time and saw an older man, early 60s, with a bushy mustache and glasses, asleep in the front seat. We agreed that with the cold weather and the fact that we could hear and feel the heater in his car at full blast with the windows closed, our biggest concern was carbon monoxide poisoning. We knocked a few times, then more loudly, then she shouted a bit to try and get his attention. No response. I started getting a bad feeling in my stomach, realizing that this was turning into more of a serious situation than we may have realized initially. We run over to the camp host's RV, but no one is around, so it's time for 911. She calls and gives our location, and the operator has us go through a checklist. Can we get his attention? No. Is he breathing? We can't tell. He's wearing several layers and a puffy vest. Okay, it's time to open the door and interact. I mask up and get ready, as between the two of us only I know CPR. This entire time, not a soul who has walked by has given a second glance. Nobody before or after us checked on him, nobody who saw us frantically call 911 or bang on the windows, and there were people who walked by and looked at us, even for a second stopped to see if things were alright. She shakes him one last time as a precaution and steps back, informing me the operator has asked us to get him out of the car and perform chest compressions. I cannot feel a pulse or see a breath, but the heater is on full blast, so he is warm and I can't entirely tell. One look at his hands and I knew everything I needed to know, but on the off chance I was wrong and he was still alive, I look around, make sure the parking brake's on, and turn off the ignition so I can focus on removing this larger man. Until a fuck up. Immediately the car starts rolling backwards. We are on a slight hill that leads straight to the water, and he is facing away from it. My initial thought is, oh fuck, this guy is alive and I'm going to push him into the lake and kill him. I'm frantically running sideways, pushing with all my strength and desperately trying to find the e-brake. I swear to God this car did not have one. My friend is screaming and pulling on the car. The poor operator is still on the line having to listen to all this, and then whoosh, there goes my footing. The street is basically just compacted mud and rocks, so it was only a matter of time, I suppose. I don't really know what happened to me, and can only get a good idea based off of my friend's account and my injuries pattern. I twisted my knee first, and dislocated it pretty immediately. That pop is not something I will be forgetting anytime soon. Then, as the car was obviously not gonna stop for my clumsy ass, my right hip hit the ground. I got dragged fully under the door of this little blue Chrysler for a good 15 to 20 feet of this hill, ripping through my jeans and both shirts. I then rolled onto my right side for one last bounce and got spat out underneath, ass over tea kettle. Obviously, I'm in a lot of pain, but the adrenaline is still coursing through me and I have to know if he is going into the lake or not. Well, I am not a religious person by any means, but goddamn Jesus took that wheel. The car made a sharp left and backed up into some trees. The guy in the car barely jiggled with impact. My friend, still on the phone with 911, runs up to me to check on me, but I shoo her off to look at the man. I'm totally okay, I wasn't. She took one look at my back and mumbled, "Fuck fuck, my boyfriend is going to kill me. And ran off. I didn't even know anything was wrong with my back. Try to stand up, and feel my knee pop a second louder time. I could absolutely feel two things moving against each other inside, and immediately fell to the ground. This very kind man with the most luxurious Shaun White-esque hair came and helped pick me up and get me out of the road so the ambulance that had just arrived could go by. These paramedics were amazing. In the blink of an eye they got this man out, on his back, stripped his shirt off and began CPR. In another blink they had all their gear set up around them. My friend signed over her phone number and ran back up to me. We got in the car with a bit of a struggle, and googled the nearest urgent care. After a half-hour drive, they took one look at me and sent me to the ER. My boyfriend took over from there and got me to the hospital. Dislocated and relocated my knee, cracked a few ribs, severe road rash on the majority of my upper back and on my right hip, severe bruising on my left hip. They gave me 10 milligrams of oxycodone in the ER for my debridement and overall pain, and I was still in so much pain I was nauseated and dizzy. On checkout they gave me a script for 15 milligrams of morphine. Still, on morphine, I am about a 6 on the pain scale. I have a few pictures from the day of my injuries if anyone is curious. Eventually, as I'm getting the rock splinters pulled out of my ass and back, my friend texts me with news. They identified the man, pronounced him dead and found his next of kin. Sheriff was so kind, and thanked us profusely for what we had done and said he wished more people like us existed. He also cleared us of any responsibility for the fate of his car. Lol. I've been checking the local obituaries every day since Friday to see if he comes up. I would love to know more about who he was and maybe even contact the family and let them know he was peaceful and looked happy and was not in pain or anything when we got there. Then I remember what happened to the car, usually turn a shade of crimson, and forget about the idea of reaching out to anyone. Too long didn't read, I just wanted to go out for once, tried to go on a hike, got hit by a dead guy in a car instead, ended up reliving a shitty version of Stand By Me. Now my boyfriend has to miss a few days of work to care for me because I cannot even sit up or pee by myself. ETA, I am so blown away. Thoroughly expected to get roasted till golden brown and delicious for being stupid and turning off the car because of XYZ technical reason, or to have you all laugh with / at me for busting my ass so badly for a guy who wasn't even able to be saved, and instead I am being flooded with such love and support. I appreciate every single piece of advice and anecdote and am trying to respond to all of you. Exclamation mark. Here are the photos my boyfriend in case they get buried, slight NSFW/L because of my butt being there and me not wanting to get in trouble. Lamau. Wow, you can't make up a story like this. No one would believe it. Hope you recover soon. Thank you, I really appreciate that. When I was being admitted to the hospital, the nurses argued and debated and even said let's go back to the front desk and figure this out as to whether or not they should file it as an auto accident or not. Well, for one, I hope you're doing okay, all things considering. And for two, oh my fucking, that's honestly like my worst nightmare. Dead man tries to kill me. You could make a creepypasta out of this story if you twisted it a little bit. And even better, people would be scared more. BC, it's a true story. Haha. Once I got home, all I could think was I touched a dead guy today. Crawled over his dead body today. His hands were so soft. I am coping with jokes the best I can. Lol. No good deed goes unpunished. Thanks for being who you are. Hope you feel 100% soon. Thank you so much. I'm more fucked up over the fact that not a single other person stopped all day to check on him. He was there before we even arrived. Frown. I'm really glad you didn't get more hurt. That whole situation sucks. I am absolutely counting my lucky stars that a wheel didn't go over me or that I didn't hit my head or hurt my spine at all. I'm very grateful to the universe for letting me out of that one. Today I fucked up by pretending to be a demon to scare the wifey and ended up being investigated by the police. Keeping up with the tradition, This didn't happen today, although I did try to post that day and was too disoriented to do so. Last weekend, I was hanging out with the wifey and we were drinking. It was around 3 to 4 AM when we got really drunk and we were playing music, dancing and joking around in one of our now traditional two-person COVID weekend parties. After a while, we were getting tired and she went to the bedroom while I went to the bathroom. I came out and saw that the bedroom was dark, and that's when I decided to do one of the silliest things a grown-ass man can do and pretend to be what she calls a scary man, and yeah. Unfortunately, it's not my first time. A little background about me that may explain my weird behavior but probably still won't, is that there's a running joke among my friends where I pretend to be an amazing, aspiring actor. It has no basis whatsoever in truth. I'm a software developer and have never done acting of any kind, but basically I'll pretend to be acting at random times and take it very seriously, act horribly, then ask my audience how I did and sprinkle in made-up technical terms, claiming to be method acting. I know it's not that funny. It's just a weird inside joke that I tend to take too far because I get a little too dedicated to the joke. Back to the story, I decided to do our scary man routine where I usually pretend to be a creepy stalker long enough for her to be absurdly yet genuinely scared. Well, that night I was drunk and decided to enhance my performance a bit and pretend to be a demon. I was relentless with my performance this time around. I must have spent a good 40 to 50 minutes getting slowly closer and closer to our bed where she was, hid in the closet and creepily peeked out from there for a long time, stayed silent and didn't move for 5 to 10 minutes to keep her on edge and made demonic sounds whenever I suddenly moved. This culminated with me finally attacking the bed by crawling around and getting under it, staying silent for a while to build up anticipation, then making demonic noises again and jumping on the bed. She was screaming but also laughing because, well, it's absurd. And I'm not really a demon. Or am I? After that, I went out of character to joke about having her evaluate my performance and basically continued my aspiring actor running joke, except whenever she triggered me by saying I did well as a demon or something along those lines. My drunk ass was so obsessive that I couldn't stop myself from pretending to be possessed by the demon again and hissing the most demonic mix of random foreign language words I could think of and would start shaking and grabbing the bed sheets, and then pretend to have come out of it and feel better now. That went on until we started hearing loud knocking on our door. The walls are incredibly thin and we were drunk, so we weren't really sure it was for us. I temporarily live in until the apartment till the remodeled house split into 4 Airbnb units, so I honestly never know if I have neighbors or not. That night, it turns out I did. I know because we heard them talk about us too. The police, remember paper-thin walls? That's when we realized they called the police on us. The knocking got more and more violent and the wifey decided to go down and open the door, but they stormed into our place right as she was going downstairs. We realized later that the landlord must have given the police officers the code to enter our unit. I have never had the police storm in and it was very surreal, especially that I was pretty drunk. That being said, I still was confused by the very violent response and attitude of the officers. This must be a noise complaint after all. I'll be the first to admit that we weren't being the quietest neighbors that night. The 2 police officers come upstairs, and separate us into 2 rooms. One officer takes me into the bedroom, asks for my ID, then asks what we've been doing tonight. I can tell from his tone that he was treating this very seriously, and I was confused by the dead serious tone even for the police, but thought it must be because we're in COVID lockdown. That is until he starts questioning me about where I know the wifey from. Well, she's not my wife on paper, but I always refer to her as wifey. Remember taking things too far? Then he started asking me whether we've had drinks and I said yes, and he said, so did you end up arguing? And that's when even my drunk stupid mind realized I'm being investigated for domestic violence. Now, domestic violence is a very serious crime, one that carries up to 10 years in prison, and in case you assumed I'm American, you weren't that far off. I live in Toronto, and fortunately we take domestic violence very seriously. Being accused is terrifying, but the wifey can't really say anything incriminating because we never argued and we were purely having fun. She also happened to not have any visible bruises recently despite randomly bruising easily. So I should just chill, right? Well, I actually was pretty chill, for a few moments, until the officer asked me to explain the blood on my shirt, and that is when even in my drunk brain his tone and seriousness suddenly all made sense. Before he asked about the blood, I was going to try to explain to the officer that the wifey and I were just fooling around. That any screams, demonic or wifeys, were just as being silly adults. But even if my name and background are stereotyped as being a typical wife beater, that I would never hurt wifey and just wanted to enjoy my Saturday night. Except now, I have blood on my shirt, on my face, and it just hit me that I had blood all over my bed behind me right there for the officer to see. In my eyes, I quickly went from being treated like just a main suspect to about to be cuffed and escorted to the police station. This also explained the reason why he was collecting evidence on his body cam by having the suspect, i.e., me, talk as much as possible to possibly incriminate himself, and also why the officer was walking around the crime scene, i.e., my place, in order to record any evidence he found. And well, I stupidly had no clue because I didn't put 2 and 2 together until the blood on my shirt was mentioned. I was to be charged right there and then, no matter what the wifey said about our shenanigans. To make things worse, I'm an immigrant who is also just 2 months away from becoming a permanent resident, but until then, any crime will have me deported. All I was thinking about was how I'm minutes away from being shoved into their police cruiser sitting right outside, and 2 to 3 months away from my life being practically over. I was thinking, how do they fly deported criminals? Will my family back home see it? How do I even explain this to anyone? Realizing that my trial had to be around the corner and more evidence couldn't hurt, I frantically begged the officer to look and film my nose on his body cam. What I didn't mention is that just before the police came into the building, my so-called method acting joke and obsession made me clench so hard onto the sheets and hold my breath so hard and hiss nonsense so hard that when combined with the steaming hot room and my tendency to have nosebleeds for no fucking reason ever since I was born, all of that happened to trigger a really bad nosebleed, right after I was in bed with the wifey, making me bleed all over the bed and all the way to the bathroom and on my shirt too. And in a crazy coincidence which truly sounds like poorly written fiction, it was right before the police stormed in to investigate me as a domestic violence perpetrator. Miraculously, the officer completely changed his attitude once I freaked the fuck out and showed him the fresh blood up my nostrils, and I begged him to film tissues I used to stop my nosebleed on his body cam. The police officers discussed it among themselves, mentioned the wifey had no signs of injuries and both of our stories match, thin walls, so I heard this pre-trial. They thankfully decided I didn't commit any heinous acts based on the evidence they had. That evidence being limited to how I acted during the investigation and the blood I had everywhere. Guess I'm glad they don't know I'm considered to be an amazing actor. Smile. Too long didn't read. I pretended to be a demon who was stalking my girl, got too carried away, made a lot of noise, made her scream, then bled everywhere and had to explain that to cops investigating me for domestic violence. Edit, I'm still scared probably for no reason, but here's some evidence. Edit 2, I know I seem like the biggest asshole here and I made a lot of mistakes that night, but just to clarify some things, we really weren't blasting music and I exaggerated how loud we were for comedic effect. I live in a house split into 4 units that are often completely vacant, and the sound travels through the vents. There's no way anyone other than possible downstairs neighbors could hear us, and I really wasn't sure if I had a neighbor that night. I didn't hear anyone that day. We were just having fun on a weekend, and yes, being drunk I took it too far and that does make me an asshole, but I would have apologized profusely if the neighbor knocked on our door or texted the landlord. Today I fucked up by asking my nurse if she had gotten the COVID vaccine. I am currently living in France, and though I have been here for almost a year, my language skills are still lacking. I get really nervous when speaking because of my limited vocabulary, and I have a really hard time with audio processing, so it oftentimes take me a while to understand what someone has said and then respond. I had to have a minor surgery last week that will require me to have a nurse come daily for the next month or so to clean and rebandage. I'm I'm trying to put myself out there a bit more in terms of speaking French, so I was shooting the shit with her. I asked if she had gotten a chance to take the vaccine because I seriously cannot wait to get mine and start to get life a little bit more normal. Well, this set her off about how she is not getting the vaccine and how the whole virus is just for businesses to make money, and then something about Bill Gates not being a scientist. I don't know, my auditory processing was only allowing me to pick up the big ideas she was spitting. Anyway, it's don't have the vocabulary to respond appropriately, and I also don't want the nurse who is packing my wow daily getting pissed at me, so I defaulted to my smile and nod and we. This was 4 days ago, and unfortunately each day I have been getting more and more of an earful about corrupt governments trying to poison us with vaccines and trying to make us go crazy with lockdowns. But today was truly the icing on the cake when she started talking about the deep state and how Joe Biden is friends with the Clintons and how corrupt it all is. Again, all the while, smiling, nodding and saying we, because I can't tell her in French that I'm not down with this anti-vaxxer, QAnon bullshit. I truly don't know where we go from here because I have 3 weeks of care left. Too long didn't read. Today I fucked up asking my nurse whether or not she got the COVID vaccine and found out she's a conspiracy theorist spouting crazy person that I will have come to house for the next 3 weeks and listen to because my French skills suck. Edit. To be clear, my fuck up was bringing up what I thought would be an innocuous subject that turned into a much deeper conversation with uncomfortable political/healthcare opinions that I didn't agree with, and having to continue to live in this fuck up because I don't have the requisite vocabulary or language skills to change the subject.